NHL draft. We are finally less than a week out from the 2023 NHL draft. We've heard forever how good it is. I've talked about it, how good this draft class is. It is absolutely insane. It's loaded. You know, there's probably 4 or 5 kids in this draft class that in any other year would be challenging for first overall. You know, it's right there with the 15 draft. So it's really exciting. And today, Bobby McKenzie from TSN, he posted his list, his top, what did I say, 96, I think I said. His top 96. What was it? Yes, 96. So he posted a mock first 3 rounds. And again, Bob McKenzie, usually, you know, his list is very reflective because he gets quite literally all of his info from scouts, from teams, from NHL people. So, you know, usually what he puts out there ends up being pretty close to what actually happens and how it unfolds. So real quick, I'm not going to go through like all 96 picks, but a couple things I do feel are worthy mentioning. So real quick, let's run through the top 10. He's got Bedard at 1, not a surprise. Fantilli at 2, not a surprise. Carlsson at 3. You know, depending on who you ask the next 3 or 4, maybe it's a surprise for you. He's got Will Smith at 4, Matvei Michkov at 5, which, Jesus Christ, I can't handle if he goes 5th to Montreal. I really can't do that. Ryan Leonard at 6, Dvorsky at 7, David Reinbacher at 8, Zach Benson at 9, and Gabe Perreault at 10. So first things first that we got to talk about real quick, and that one is is Will Smith going before Matvei Michkov. Listen, both studs. You got Will Smith. You know, he plays the premium position. He plays center. Whether he turns out to be a center in the NHL, we'll see. One of the most entertaining players in the draft to watch. The plays he's able to make. I had a friend, one of my buddies in our scouting outlet there, Smart with an R. You pronounce the R, it's not Smat. Scouting. You know, they look obviously very different, but when he's on and he's making the plays, he looks like Tage Thompson. You know what I mean? Like just some highlight reel plays almost every single time he touches the puck. He played on that ridiculous line alongside Ryan Leonard and Gabe Perreault, all headed to BC. So it's going to be interesting because they've played together for a couple of years and they are going to play together again for another couple of years at least. You know, Will Smith, for me, I'd probably put him behind Michkov because all things being equal, if, you know, the Russia thing wasn't real or wasn't happening and he wasn't signed through 2026, you know, he's probably challenging for first overall. I think Bedard probably either way created some separation anyways this year, but that's a guy that would be right there with him. In terms of pure talent, the ceiling, it's right there. He looks like some kind of version of like a Patrick Kane. Like the plays he can make, the shot is a joke. Again, I've talked about it before. He can shoot any which way. He creates his own scoring chances. The playmaking even as well is also, you know, come a long way this year for him. And I thought actually, you know, even the defensive game was vastly improved by the end of the season. So that's really like the first one where you're sitting there a little bit surprised. Again, you want to say that you are surprised, but you're probably not, just because this isn't because, you know, the playing, but you're not surprised probably just because, again, he's signed, he's in Russia. Like it's going to be a couple of years before anyone is able to bring him over. Which really, again, part of that for me is why it makes so much sense for San Jose to do it. But at 4, God, I really am getting anxiety already thinking about Michkov adding to that prospect pool in the Canadian system. But anyways, we'll see what happens there. But that's the first one that kind of jumps out at you. Will Smith over Matvei Michkov, although I do love Will Smith. Michkov is Michkov, dude. Like, this kid's unbelievable. You know, the next one after that for me, Zach Benson being at 9. Part of me says, hey, that's great. The NHL scouts and teams are telling him that, no, this kid is a top 10 pick. I don't give a fuck if he's 5'9". Don't care if he actually ends up being a center in the NHL. He actually has him listed as a left wing. I've said it once. I've said it a million times. Zach Benson is probably the smartest player in this draft. He's been the best player on the Winnipeg Ice, one of the best teams in the Canadian Hockey League, in the CHL, WHL, RIP Winnipeg Ice, by the way. They're now moving to Washington. He's been the best player on that team for 2 years now. And he was driving the line with Matt Savoy, Connor Geekie when they were playing together. Two guys that went top 12 last year. I think Geekie went whatever. At least top 15 either way. Both of those dudes last year, top 15 picks. And guess who was the best player on that line when he was playing with them? Zach Benson, who was a -1, draft -1. This year, once again, same thing. Every time that he's put on a new line, that line instantly becomes the best line on that team. And that's one of the best teams in the WHL. So for me, I probably got him. Like, that would be my guy at 5 after Carlsson and Smith. Nope, that's not true. Carlsson Michkov. I don't care about the size. It's not going to be a problem. Usually, you know, you look at an underage or an undersized kid and you say, well, you better be a really good skater. That's not at all the case with Benson. It's actually probably the worst part of his game is the skating, but it doesn't matter with him. Like, he's so smart. He defends unbelievably well. He was the best penalty killer in the WHL this season, by the way, as a draft eligible. I think he was second or third in shorthanded goals. Like, all he does is create offense. All he does is affect the game at a 200-foot level. Like, I'm a big Zach Benson guy. So part of me says, hey, it's great that, you know, it sounds like maybe the NHL sentiment is that he is a top 10 pick, even though he's 5'9" 3/4, which I love the exact measurements. You know, because we were seeing other people mock him at, you know, 16, 17, which is just fucking insane to me. You cannot let him fall that far. That's a guy, if you're Minnesota at pick number 21, if he's sitting there at 17, I'm doing whatever I need to do to move up. It would also drive the fan base nuts because there are so many people, and it's probably partly my fault too, where I say I would like to see them draft a big center because it's something they don't necessarily have in their pipeline. It would drive everyone nuts that they get another guy that's 5'9", 5'10". But he's that good. Like, he is a stud. He's a top 5 pick for me, at the very least top 10. So again, part of me says, yay, top 10. That's what the industry feels. That's what the NHL scouts, the NHL executives feel. I love that about him, and I love that about, you know, the NHL saying, hey, yeah, he's small, but it's fine. Another part of me says I would take him way before I would take David Reinbacher, who is Bob McKenzie's and definitely this year's first defenseman off the board. I would definitely take him before Dalibor Dvorsky. I love Dvorsky. And I think I would still probably definitely take him before Leonard or Will Smith. So part of me says it's too low, but again, I'm not going to complain with him being at 9 overall. Gabe Perreault is the big climber here. So Gabe Perreault, he's got him at 10th overall. This is a guy that was probably late first, you know, coming into the season, and he's really blossomed to like just an elite playmaker. He's got the NHL level shot. He's not a good skater, and it's not exactly correctable, but that's okay. That'll really be the big challenge with him if he can make that offense translate in the NHL. You know, the skating's going to get in his way, and then he's going to be able to keep up with the plays. He's going to be able to do what he does, being a step behind. I think he's smart enough and good enough, and again, I think he's able to affect the game offensively in so many ways that he should be able to overcome that to an extent. And he's one of the more creative players in the draft. He's a very good playmaker. He's got a great shot. You know, defense is a work in progress, but he works fucking really hard. So good for him for getting a top 10 look here from Bobby Mack. Little high for me, but I can totally understand it. Like, there's a legit super high ceiling with him. So Gabe Perreault. And again, like the Boston College line from the USN TDP, Smith, Leonard, Perreault staying together at BC, and apparently Bobby McKenzie's mock first top 10 picks. Next 10 picks, he's got Matthew Wood at 11. Big dude out of UConn, was one of the top scorers for a freshman. He's unbelievable. He's 6'4", 200 pounds, plays hard, sniper, really fun to watch. He's got him at 11. Colby Barlow at 12. Who I am actually probably expecting to go in the top 10 before. Maybe I would assume that they're going to be NHL teams talk themselves into taking Colby Barlow before they take Zach Benson, just because he's big. He's like 6'1", 6'2". He just looks like an NHL player. He's got one of the best shots in the draft too. If he didn't get hurt, he would have put up 50 to 60 goals this year in the OHL. He's really good, but not exactly the greatest playmaker in the world. Skating's good, but he just kind of just makes it work. So I'll be curious to see what happens with him when he does go to the NHL. But then he's got Oliver Moore at 13, Axel, Sandin, Pellikka at 14, Brayden Yager at 15, Nate Danielson 16, Sam Honzek at 17, Otto Stenberg at 18, Dmitri Simashev at 19, which is probably the lowest I've seen him. And then Tom Willander, my guy. You've heard me talk about him before. Tom Willander at number 20. This is where it really gets interesting. These 10 picks, because, again, I just said it. Colby Barlow, it just seems like he's going to be a slam dunk, like, for sure, top 10 pick, because he's got the size. He looks, he plays like an NHL player. He's got great offense in terms of, like, the shot anyways. I don't know how translatable it is, so I wouldn't take him top 10, but, you know, I totally get it. A guy that I do think will go top 10, just based on, well, I would expect a flirt with top 10 is a Nate Danielson. I'm surprised he actually put him at 16, because I'm just seeing so many people talk about him in the top 10. I love Nate Danielson. I do think he's a stud, really good playmaker. He's got a real good shot. He's got two-way capability. He's got the size. Skating's got a way to go, but that's fine. It's not like uncorrectable or whatever. I've seen a lot of people say that he's going to go top 10, so that's interesting to me. Brayden Yager had really just an off year this year in Moose Job, but he's a no-shit sniper. He should be able to produce in the NHL, if nothing else, from the goal scoring. He's going to be an absolute weapon on whatever power play he ends up. So, no, that was a guy that was challenging for top 8 at this time last year. You know, when we were coming into this year's draft, you know, that was a guy that was going to be there challenging the top guys. So that's interesting. Also interesting that he's got Pellikka at 14, because I see a lot of NHL executives trying to talk themselves out of taking him too high because he's 5'11" and not 6 feet. Dynamic skating, really fun to watch. Just highlight real level stuff from the back end. Just such an awesome player. I mean, Craig Button's got him like top 5, which is nuts to me. He's also got like Willander at 8. But hey, you know, I like that NHL teams aren't necessarily too afraid of taking him, you know, pretty high in the first round there. Oliver Moore is stud, very fun player, probably the best skater of the draft, really fun playmaker, going to Minnesota, so that's going to be fun. Honzek, I actually thought would be higher. Stenberg, I'm surprised at 18, but Simashev, this is where we really got to talk about guys, or talk about defensemen in this draft. I know plenty of people, with good reason, despite the offense, or at least the numbers not jumping off the page at you, Simashev is their favorite defenseman in this draft, him or Reinbacher. So fascinating to see him down at 19. I don't really think, and I think we were talking about this last week or the week before on here. If he's going to go at 19, if he's, you know, falling below some of these guys, I don't really have any worry. It's not, yes, he's Russian, but he doesn't have the same like risk factor as Michkov. He's not signed through 2026. He's kind of, it's just a different risk level for me. So there's not like the Russian factor with him. I think there's no worries about him really wanting to coming over. I don't think you're going to need to wait forever. And realistically, it's probably fine if you let him just go continue to develop in Russia. But this is a big dude. He's 6'4". He's 200 pounds. He plays fucking hard. He is one of the best skaters in the draft as well, despite being 6'4". He can turn on a dime. I've said it last week. I've watched him like just break ankles evading the forecheck, where he's just sending forecheckers into the boards head first. And, you know, there's no reason that the offense shouldn't pop, but even if it doesn't, because again, he's got really good habits in the offensive zone. He's shown, you know, between the tools and how smart he is and how like just his ability to fucking turn. It's unbelievable, but there's definitely more offense than that stat line shows. I mean, I think at one point he had like 1 point, like 20 MHL games, and like the MHL is a big time scoring league. So that like never should have been that low. But I've seen enough just from the way he plays and just like the tools he's got, the offense is in there. But at the very least, he seems like a safe bet to be a solid shutdown second line guy who can skate, who can break the puck out. So one of the best defensemen in this draft. So I am surprised that he's got him down at 19. Because again, I know my guy Jerome Berube's got him at, I think, at like 5th overall. So it's interesting to see him down at 19. I know there's a lot of debates about that guy, but I mean, again, you look at a kid that's 6'4", 200 pounds, who's high-end defense. He's got all the tools in the world, can skate as well as he does. I don't know how you don't take him higher than 19, but, you know, that'll be interesting to watch there. And then last one, Tom Willander. Again, you've heard me talk about him before. Another high end, one of the better skating defenseman in this draft. He's got a right shot as well. He's got size when he wants to. He can be physical. And there's a little bit more offense than I think we've seen. You know, I think he proved a lot of people wrong, or at least he showed a lot of people that there is, you know, a decent ceiling offensively, and he's excellent defensively. He's headed to BU next year. So I am the one thing that's kind of disappointing is like he was the guy that I was hyping up that only a couple other people were. So now he's going to get all the coverage. So now I can't even take credit for anything. So that sucks for me. All right. So the last, well, actually, there's a couple guys I need to talk about in this first round, and then we can kind of just go find some players from Bobby Mack's first 3 rounds here that I'm like, how the fuck do you have them there? But since this is Minnesota Wild prospect related, let's go where he's got number 21. He's got Calum Ritchie, and what do you know? Calum Ritchie, he is a center. He is 6'2". He's 190 pounds. He had an off year this year, but so did quite literally everybody on Oshawa. But hey, this is like the exact mold of player that we've talked about on here, right? Like he's different than the other centers they've got in that pipeline. You know, I think this year it's interesting because there's a lot of people that had him top 10, you know, after the Holinka, that first junior tournament that really kind of sets the stage. It's like the kicking off of like a draft eligible season. But he's like, you know, he had this off year, and I know a lot of people soured on him. But I still believe in this kid. Like, not the greatest skater in the world, but he's a big dude. He's got two-way like potential. He's not there yet, but the shot is no joke. He's a legit playmaker. He's got high-end skill, and he can be pretty physical. So, Minnesota Wild. This is, I think when I first started talking about like targets early on, Calum Ritchie actually may have been the first guy that I brought up, just because, again, he's just different than the rest of the centers you have in the prospect pool. And that's a real nice piece to add. So I think he'll probably be gone by pick number 21. Just given the fact that he's, you know, probably a center, even if he's a right wing, doesn't really matter to me. But he's a 6'2". He's got a right shot, 190 pounds. That's got good offense and two-way capabilities, or at least two-way potential. The defense isn't there yet, but like he's got good enough habits that you think that should come as he continues to develop. You know, and every coach that he's ever had just raves about it, but so does every fucking kid that's going to go in the first round. All their coaches like, oh yeah, he's the best. Really good kid. But you know, again, so he's like the exact mold of player that I think the Wild, I'm sure, would love to target. Big center with size, projectable offense, two-way capability. It's right up their alley. So, I mean, I think they would love to take, depending on who's there. I bet that's a player that they would be thrilled to take at 21. And I think that would be a good choice. So there you go. And we'll see if Nate Danielson's there at 21, which he won't be. Another good choice. Another guy we've talked about before. But there you go. And then the guy that Joe Smith, they did the Athletic mock draft. They had each beat writer select for their team. He took Eduard Sale. That's so much fun. He is such a fun fucking player. Again, he's a big dude, high end skill, crazy hands, really good shot. Popped at the Holinka. You know, he's just, you know, he's got an accusation that, you know, he's not the most engaged player all the time, but when he does give a shit, when he does play, he is a fucking freak. He is like, the ceiling on him is crazy high. One of the higher ceilings of the draft class. Is just, you don't see it consistently at all times. And sometimes it just looks like he doesn't give a shit, but I would love that too. It's like kind of a risky pick just because you don't really know what that, like, every GM says you got to have an A game, you got to have a B game. I don't really know what the fuck Chalet's B game is, because it could be, it's terrifying. Like, I can't see him being like, yeah, I'll be happy to be on a fourth line. But if he hits, man, that's a no shit top 6 high scoring player. And he's a ton of fun to watch. So, hey, I would be over the moon if they took him at 21. He's fun to watch, man. He's such a good player. Whew. All right. Last couple here in the first round that I just had to bring up. Theo Lindstein, to me, is a left shot D out of Sweden. Really good skater. He can break the puck out. You know, I I think he's good. He fit right in the SHL this season, even though Brinas, however you say it, got relegated. He was playing big minutes for them. He fit in fairly well. I just don't see what it is other than the fact that he's 6 foot and he skates really well. I think he's got the capability to, do certain things. Like, again, he's got really good. He's a really good skater. He moves right to left really well. I don't like. It's not like he's like walking the line on the offensive zone and like creating shooting lanes, finding passing lanes. Like to me, he really fits in. Like if he's going to be a top 4 defenseman in the NHL, it's because he's kind of a passenger to whoever his partner is. So, I mean, I think for me, and I know that for our outlet, I think we put him at like 60 something or 70 something. It's just because, again, like I don't really see a super high ceiling with him, but I mean, I think he's probably, he's a safe, decent enough player. So, but just interesting to see him there at 26. And Andrew Crystal at 27, who probably should be at least the top 15 pick. Again, you talk about like guys that don't have a B game. Andrew Crystal, if that kid gave a shit about playing defense, he'd be a slam dunk. But the skating's real fucking bad. He's 5'9.5", and doesn't play like the most projectable game. But like at the same time, he's just like better than everybody. So. That tends to not necessarily work out all that well in the NHL, but I have a feeling that he's going to make it because he is so good. But it's just, again, it's like mind blowing to see anyone put Theo Lindstein above Andrew Crystal, even though, we've all heard that Crystal has a chance to go late first, early second. But, in terms of just pure ceiling and talent, he's a top 12 pick for sure. So that's interesting to me. Oliver Bonk, depends who you ask, man. Depends who you ask. I do think he's going to end up going first round. I don't know if I would be thrilled about that. He is what he is, man. He's a big kid. He plays physical. He's hard to play against. He's got decent enough offense. He makes an okay first pass. And, he's got the NHL bloodline, Father Radek. He's a fine player. I'm not like, I know in our smart scouting outlet, they're all way lower on him than I would be. But like, to me, first round is a little bit rich. I just can't see a huge, super high upside with him, but who knows, man? Like I've also talked to a lot of people who consider him a super well-rounded right shot defenseman. So I don't know. Again, you're looking at a right shot D with good size. He's physical. He's got the NHL bloodline, so automatically NHL teams are going to love him. But just interesting to see him, there with some of the other snubs. And I mean, the last pick, number 32, Riley Heidt. That to me, 32 is way too low. Way too low. He's right up there. He's a real good playmaker in this draft. He's a ton of fun to watch. He's not the biggest dude in the world, but he can make plays. He's got a crazy shot. He plays hard. He can be a bit of a hothead sometimes. I'm surprised to see him at 32 there. But yeah, there you go. So that's my takes on the first round there. Just jumping through, and then we'll just take questions and get the hell out of here. I did want to run through a couple other picks that he's got here, specifically guys that I think would be good fits for the Minnesota Wild, just because, we should talk about the Wild a little bit more than we have. And a couple of guys he's got pretty high here in the second round. David Edstrom, I think he probably has a chance to go first round just because he really popped off at the U18s. Again, Swedish center, a no-shit center. He's 6'3", 190 pounds. He can shoot the fucking puck, man, but he also showed two-way capability. He looks like a good, shutdown's probably a little bit strong, but a good defensive center with size. The skating's not superb, but he is fairly shifty, and he can he's pretty good in transition with the puck on his stick. He's fairly creative, but he gives you a little bit of everything in the offensive zone. So I wouldn't be shocked to see him go first round, honestly. But that's another guy that 6'3" center, right shot, creative player that has two-way capabilities. Another guy that the Minnesota Wild, I'm sure, are looking at. And especially if they want to move up in the second round here, I think that's a guy they'd love to take. He's got him at 37. So it's interesting because I've seen him be right around 50, either literally here at 35, 36, 37, or I've seen people be like, oh, he's going to go top 18. So it's just interesting to see where he goes. I mean, I think mid-second at the latest we're going to see him go, just because again, he's 6'3" center. But that's another guy that I love, and I think the Minnesota Wild love, I'm sure, as well. Anton Wahlberg, we all know how I feel about good old Anton. 6'4", 200 pounds, good skater, just so raw, but all the tools in the fucking world. He's got him at 40. I think that's probably realistic. I love, he's such a fun player to watch. He just goes fucking Sports Center top 10 mode constantly. One guy that's way too low for me here, and I think this is actually realistic, and obviously it is because Bobby Mack put him here. Man, Grayson Sachin at 49 is just a crime. I do think he's going to end up going right around there just because he's a center who was on a stacked Seattle team and playing like 13, 14, 15 minutes a night. But Jesus, he's still fucking produced right around a point per game. He plays hard. He's a good he just does everything really well. Like, he projects to be a solid two-way player with good offense, but the fact that he's 5'10" is going to like scare teams away, and he's 155 pounds. But 49, that's just a crime to me, man. That's so low. He's a stud. He deserves more love than he gets, but whatever. It is what it is. He should go in the first round for me all day long. My boy, Oscar Fisker-Molgaard at 51, I think that's probably realistic, but just the ascent with this kid, man. This is a guy who was literally playing junior hockey in Denmark up until 2 years ago. And then this year he ends up being, before the end of the year, he became HV71 second line center in the NSHL and playing unbelievably well. Not eye-popping stats, and his style of play is the most eye-popping in the world, but he's got some of the best hockey IQ in this draft as well. And he's a transition demon. He's such a good skater. Like, he's going to be a solid NHL player, super reliable in all three zones. I think there's offense. There's definitely room to grow for him offensively. He doesn't have an NHL level shot whatsoever, but he's going to be a really good NHL player for a long time, and a guy that like you're just penciling in to be voted as like one of the most underrated players in the league forever. He's a stud. He's so good. He's like top 3 favorite players in the draft for me. So I get upset when I see him at 51. He should be in the first round. Okay. And the last couple I have to bring up because it's insane that they're this low. They're not, and he doesn't have in the first round. Jaden Perreault at 58. It's only because he's 5'9". One of the most dynamic playmakers in this draft. He's going to have to overcome a lot to really hit his full potential in the NHL just because he is 5'9". He is 160 pounds. So it's going to like, it will be an uphill battle for him, but his kid is a human highlight. Really so fun to watch on a really good Chicago team, the USHL. 58. That's also criminal for me. That is fucking criminal. He is an absolute stud, man. An absolute stud. And same breath, because again, he's 5'8"3/4. William Whitelot, 65. Doesn't necessarily surprise me though, because like you want to talk about a defensive fucking black hole. William Whitelaw is your guy. But again, dynamic playmaker, high-end shot for a guy that size. All he does though is produce offense and just put up highlight reel fucking plays. So 2 guys that are literally only at 58 and 65 because they are 5'9" and 5'8" respectively. So really brutal. They should go way higher than that. Such good players, man. Such good players. Shout out my guy Felix Ungerstorm at 85, by the way. But let's see. Anyone else I really felt like I needed to bring up here? Well, yes, because another guy that I would have said was challenging for a potential first-round pick, even though he was 5'8", but even more so, a bigger reason I'm bringing him up because these 3, 81, 82, and 83, the all-Italy sequence of this draft. Luca Pinelli at 81, center of the Ottawa 67, stud, real fun player to watch, but he's 5'8" 3/4, so there you go. That's why he's there. Tristan Bertucci, defenseman out of Flint, big dude, plays hard. He's a good player. I think that'll be a nice little pickup for whoever gets him, probably 3rd round. I think he's a solid player. And then an actual Italian goalie, 6'6", playing for Färjestad in Sweden, Damian Clara. So there you go. They got the all Italy sequence in this fucking draft from Bobby Mack. But that's where we'll cut it for the draft.